Welcome to Guac is Extra, creative culture at its core. My name is Stacey Sanchez. I'm your host. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm with today's featured artist.
My name is Ernie, and I'm with Adversity Breeds Malice.
All right, so welcome to the show. Now, you just came out with your new EP.
Yeah, so we put out our first EP, which is titled Non Sequitur. You can find it on iTunes, Spotify, Bandcamp, SoundCloud, you name it.
All right.
It is our flagship, trademark sound that we've kind of been eager to share with the world. It's been a long time coming for us. It's a huge accomplishment to finally, and I know a lot of bands say this, hey, it's a big accomplishment, but we honestly feel that way. It's been a long time coming for us to finally put something out. Again, like we've had all these lineup changes and several setbacks throughout the years that we've been a band. We've been a band since 2011, and whether it's not having enough money or not finding the right members, having lineup changes, scheduling conflicts, like you name it, we've kind of seen a little bit of everything under the sun for ABM, but to finally have it come together in this fashion and put out the EP, we're glad to have it formed the way it did. So it's a 4-track EP. It's got some killer drums with our good friend James. He was a hired gun for this project. So it's got a little bit of everything.
So a little bit of everything includes, what you titled it as progressive, metal, and instrumental. So let's talk a little bit more about that too. The reason why you went from vocal to just fully instrumental. You said it was just by chance that it occurred, correct?
Yeah, the way the band was created, it was never planned that way. We started off as a 5-piece. We did have a vocalist, so it was 2 guitar players, a bass player, a drummer, and a vocalist, so 5 people. Our very first gig was supposed to be at a GameStop for like a Call of Duty video release or something or other. I forgot what Call of Duty it was, but a friend of a friend's girlfriend had hooked us up with hey, my store manager, he's looking for some bands to play. I know you guys are just kind of getting your groove together. Would y'all be interested? And I signed us up, and I was like, yeah, for sure. We were close to writing all of our songs at that point, and so we said yes. We kind of threw ourselves out there, with the exception that the vocalist was not ready at the time. We had a lot of setbacks with vocals, trying to just adapt certain styles and certain vocal lines to fit into the music that was already written. Long story short, the show fell through. I don't know what happened with the video game release, that it didn't go down, and so we pulled out of the show. But that day we kind of realized we were going to do the show without
either way. Okay.
Yeah, we were going to do the show either way, whether the vocalist was ready or not. The show fell through, but after that day, I think we all kind of came out of it and thought, you know what? It doesn't matter. Who cares? Fuck it. Let's just try it without vocals and see where that goes. And so that was a happy ending all on its own. That just it became that way. And I think to good reception overall. Whenever we do live shows, people come up to us and say hey man, we like y'all sounds, whatever, but how come we don't do vocals? Or I can picture this or I can picture that. And yeah, I mean, granted, it's metal, you can picture the person yelling in certain parts, and
right.
There's certain parts in our songs where a nice yell would go great here or what have you. But I think at the end of the day, that kind of keeps us on our toes and open to maybe collaborations in the past. That's something that we've considered bringing on board, maybe doing a cool little collab with say a rapper or maybe a vocalist that's not really within the genre but can still kind of maybe adapt to the thing. We've been toying with this idea of putting out maybe an EP or some type of recording called Adversity Breeds Malice.
Oh, right.
Where we can feature maybe, I don't know, say 5 tracks, but every track is um, custom written or in collaboration with a specific vocalist, preferably vocalists of different vocal ranges and genres. So we can see where that goes. And just normally say Stacey Sanchez, the rapper, is now gonna be in this ABM track, but we kind of write this thing together where like the two styles work in a sense. But I think that's just something that we've always been open to, and just kind of pushing the boundary in to any capacity. But again, you never know until you try. So the same thing with being instrumental, like it just happened that way. Also, there was a fun tidbit. There was a time where we didn't have vocals, but we had 3 guitar players.
Okay.
At once. So that was also interesting too. But I think we made it work to a certain degree, and that was also an interesting experience. So we're open to seeing what destiny throws our way. But at the end of the day, like, I think that flexibility kind of keeps us going.
Yeah, and it would be really cool to kind of see that on how much the band would evolve after you've tried maybe different vocalists to kind of jump in for the sake of something amusing, or maybe you're holding some kind of sweepstakes, or I don't know, it's just another phase in the band's history. But it's to see how much maybe they would eventually maybe influence something extra, and then suddenly the band begins to grow, whether it's with another someone else, or it's just the band evolving in general instrumentally.
Yeah, I think that would be our end game, our takeaway, is that like evolution, and just maybe the EP ends up being or that release ends up being just kind of like a muse to kind of put it out there and say, hey, we tried it. But what we're really interested in is what steps that's gonna pave into our next move. You know what I mean? And so who's to say that might not, maybe after that we might discover something and say, hey, like, Stacey the rapper is, it's a great addition to this. Maybe we feature more rapper things in there, or
fun fact.
Just
I'm not an rapper.
Just explore different things that we haven't been doing before.
Correct.
But just to get out there, and at the end of the day, like, we're also big on collaborating and bringing on board other talent, even outside of music, just things that can help everybody grow, and market and expand our voice and your voice, or what have you. We're all about that. So the sky's the limit. You never know who your next collaboration is gonna be with next, and how well that's gonna do. So we try to keep that flexibility and that open mind.
As far as influences are concerned, because some artists prefer that. They say, you know what, don't put us in a box. We prefer for you to categorize us based off of other artists that either sound like us, other related artists, or based off of our own, influences. Where does the band come from as far as those influences?
We've never been, rigid on defining ourselves within a genre. At the end of the day, like, everything falls into a category, and I think that's just human nature, to categorize things so we can understand them and relate to them. And that's natural. We're not against that either. But like I said, we, even down to just our writing, like, we always, we try to approach it as open and as creatively as we can. Sometimes Ram and I will sit here at my house, and sometimes our jam sessions start off with acoustic guitars, and we're willing to try anything to just kind of get the juices flowing. But as far as genres, like, between all of us, for example, our bass player, he's like the biggest like death metal guy in the band. He's all about like the blast beats and the pig squeals, and cattle decapitation, Deicide, Dark Funeral. Like, he was like the crazier heavy metal guy. Ram is a little bit more proggy. He's more into like Pliny, and just his mind works in a different way, where like he hears certain things that I don't hear. And I think that's, for me personally, that's like where he adds value to what we do, is because he's more analytical in that sense, in the creative writing world. And so I admire that about him, because he'll hear certain things, certain time signatures, or he'll his mind will break things and say, hey, how about, maybe we cut this phrase in half and then mix it with this. So I mean, yeah, like it's a lot of moving parts. And then for me, like I'm kind of the guy that's all over the place musically or influence wise. I'm always jamming anything from the death metal stuff, anything from like salsa to cumbias.
Oh wow.
Yeah, like if you look at like a good indicator of this, I realized that you know a couple years ago when Spotify started doing your playlist of the year or whatever, like
Right.
these are your top 100 most listened to songs. And I'll tell you, like my playlist personally, it's like it's got Red Hot Chili Peppers, then it jumps to Little Dragon, it jumps to this Japanese band Trico, who they've actually played down here at Yerberia. There's some salsa in there, and so my playlist is just like all over the place. And I think that's I'd like to say that's my strong suit, is that I draw influence from different things, and I think that's what I bring to the band, is just trying to see different perspectives and like, hey, maybe
the flexibility.
Yeah, this sounds cool, but what if we added this instrument here? Or what if maybe there were some organs here, and maybe the guys might not hear it or kind of see, a couple steps ahead that way, but sometimes there's some convincing, and then we'll tab it out, we put it on our software, and I mean, it sometimes it works.
Well, I feel like that the concept of creativity has to work that way, right? You're not necessarily going to follow like one yellow brick road. It's the concept of being able to combine a number of influences in order to create something unique. And I think that's also very important for a band itself that's trying to distinguish themselves from the rest. I mean, thankfully, there's very few bands in the Valley that are considered to be instrumental like yourself. And I can't think of any other local band that's very similar to yours as well. But if there were, right, I think it would be very, very important for y'all to find a way to distinguish yourself, right? Despite, them having a graphic artist on the table in order to create these awesome graphics of yours, like the one behind you. It's a cool one. It is, right? But yeah, there it is. Show it. The thing though, and this one too.
Oh, yes.
Yes. So, but it's so I think it is very important to be able to grab that. And so I feel like it's when you hear their music, like I heard most of the songs off of the EP. I didn't get to hear all of them, unfortunately, but I did hear most of them. And I think it's more of knowing that if you're listening to an instrumental band, you want to refrain from it sounding like elevator music, for the sake of knowing that, I mean, I've been on many elevators, and yes, you have the standard classical stuff, but there have been moments where I feel like the song is so repetitive and it just goes on and on and on, and I'm going to fall asleep.
Right.
With going towards an instrumental band that's supposed to be metal, you don't want to fall asleep. I think your goal as a band is to wake people up, right? And kind of start the party. So when I heard the EP, I like the concept of knowing that it didn't stay in one place. The concept of flexibility comes into play, where I know that it goes from A to M, and then from M to Y, and maybe back to C. So as far as consider those letters to be different sounds. And so it kind of takes you like on this little trip where I'm not stagnant. I'm kind of taking a little adventure through the song. So, I mean, that's the feeling that I got. I'm a fan of instrumental progressive music. And so when I heard your music, I could hear a lot of Bolivia in it.
It's interesting that you picked that up, because I think at the end of the day, you said something that kind of triggered a thought in my head, and it's true. The essence or the core of this band at the end of the day is that to kind of push the boundaries and just try to think outside the box in any way we can, whether it's especially through the music, but whether it's through even down to the packaging on our EP, the way we brand ourselves online, the type of artwork that we put out, the type of even song titles, like if you go through the EP, that's something too that I think we pride ourselves in just trying to just explore different possibilities, and instead of just trying to name this song I don't know, something off the top of my head, like The Trust, you know what I mean? We even then, like as an instrumental band, like you have to find some type of meaning to the music that you write, and then put a song title to it. You know what I mean?
Correct.
Because we're an instrumental band, we don't have vocals to fall back on, and I think at the end of the day, we see the glass half full, in that allows us to roam, a little more freely and explore things where we don't have to wait for a vocalist, or not physically wait, but we don't have to consider a vocal line here. We don't have to consider, overdoing it here for the sake of the vocals to come through. We kind of pave our own path, and I think that's in a way that's paved the structure of who we are, who we want to become, and it allows us for a lot of creativity and freedom that I think at the end of the day is also a core element of this band, and that's something that I've kind of told the guys too. Whenever we jam and write stuff, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just let's set it all on the table and see what moving parts work. And if you exactly like you said, like if we put A, B, T, and W, like, hey, this works too. And as long as it sounds good and we like it, like, why not? We've never been rigid in that sense of like, nah, man, it needs to have a chorus, verse, chorus, bridge, back to the chorus.
Yeah.
We're open to that too. But I think at the end of the day, we try to stay very flexible in what we're trying to accomplish.
Right. I think it's very, hats off to anyone, to any artist that's able to stay, within that, to stay structured in a way. One of the best things is the concept of being able to break away, right? And to break away from that box, or break away from the norm. And because how is music supposed to evolve, correct? It's cool to see how an artist can be okay with kind of breaking those barriers. I think a really good artist in that respect, and not to go into because of who her husband is, but Grimes is really good at separating yourself from the rest. When I first heard her music, it was very definitely out of the norm, and I was like, what is she on? For the sake of, it's like, wow, what were you doing when you created this music? And people loved her for that. You like, in other words, you hear Grimes and you wouldn't be able to compare her to someone else.
Anything else, right.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that takes a lot of time and creativity to be able to do that. But the concept of being flexible with knowing, hey, you know what, it's okay to step beyond, those boundary lines that you already set for yourself, because you're trying to evolve.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head when you said, how else is music going to evolve? And, not that we're pioneering or reinventing the wheel, but even if we can add, our 1% or like 0.1% to just, expand the genre, or just do things that haven't been done before, or explored in a certain way that haven't been explored in that way. I think at the end of the day, that's why we ended up in the genre that we are in. And again, that's just something that happened because we had certain ideas that were often I want to say maybe like contradicting to one another, where like that doesn't belong in metal, that's something else. We started discovering these like progressive bands, and that's how we figured out like this is the genre that I guess widely accepts these other outside ideas. Going back to our core values, I guess, of this band, it's just that, like, just you said it, like, just try to be different and explore things that haven't been done, before. And just when we started this off, like, I remember having conversations with the guys and just trying to, feel, how can we put our spin to this, and just, we do our own thing, but it doesn't have to be the cliche thing. Like I said, like the cliche structure, the cliche, lyrics, any of that was something that we were always very against from the very get-go. And I'm fortunate at the end of the day to like play alongside these other like-minded individuals too, that kind of share the same values, or the goals in mind to like, hey, yeah, like let's be flexible with these things and explore things that we haven't done before. It doesn't always have to be this freeform thing. Sometimes there's structure, and sometimes we all kind of come to this agreement of like, all right, yeah, like maybe this should be more on a traditional path. But I think at the end of the day, that's just our flexibility, I guess, that keeps us going.
So let's talk about the concept of creativity, but on a more promotional level, because I have seen the band do something that I was noticing that other bands weren't doing, which was a listening parties. I know you would come out with your music, and you had invited a lot of like-minded individuals to get involved. And this was a matter of, and I know it was a very simple concept. So I would love to hear you talk about it. Why do a listening party in the first place, and how do you think it went?
I think it went well. For those of you tuning in, what we ended up doing, this was a little bit, a couple months before our EP was out. We got together with like a few of our friends. Our good buddy Mark, he lent us his apartment, and this was before quarantine, so
correct.
He lent us his apartment, and we just invited all of our closest friends whom we thought can get a kick out of this thing, and we invited people, and we sat them through one specific song of the EP, and so a couple things out of this. We recorded everybody's reaction throughout the entire duration of the song, so it's just basically somebody listening to the song and then just them kind of narrating what they're hearing as they're hearing it.
Correct.
And so two things with that. One, we wanted to do a compilation video of all these reactions to kind of gauge our music, to see what the general perception was between all sorts of minds that are not just metalheads, but some people weren't even into metal. Some people don't even listen to music that often. And I think at the end of the day, we like to put our music under that microscope, I feel like, just for the sake of see how it sizes up, see how it does, how it's perceived against other points of views, other people that did like different genres. And we're not afraid of that either. I mean, at the end of the day, people are always going to judge your music, whether it's good or bad. And I don't expect everybody to like it or to praise it. It's not for everybody. And that's just life.
Right.
I can bake a cheesecake, but 9 out of 10
delicious.
people might agree. Yeah, 9 out of 10 people might agree, like, this is the best cheesecake I've ever had. And then that one person, and that's just understandable. That's just life. But yeah, we wanted to put it under a microscope. We wanted to get everybody's opinion on it, and I think it went well. It was a nice reunion. One, to get everybody together. Two, it was an awesome experience to take that leap and do something that I hadn't done before, and then of course I hadn't seen other bands do down here either.
Correct.
And again, just like explore different venues, different opportunities of how we can promote these things, rather than the traditional way of, hey, our EP's out, go listen to it, or hey, here's a link to Spotify or whatever. But I think it went well. It was definitely a nice experience, and I think if next time we have an opportunity to put out more music, that's definitely something that we'd like to explore. Hopefully, maybe on a grander scale and have a little bit more of production value, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, it was a fun experience.
Despite whether or not it was positive or not, right? Because I'm pretty sure you got a vast number of responses. Right. And these responses, where did they go? Where did you put these responses, and how did you promote for the band after that?
So that was something, positive or negative. That's something that we wanted to include in the video regardless. We don't want to lie and just, put together a highlight reel and say, hey, this EP is the best thing that's ever happened. No, and again, that was part of that experiment or concept, whatever you want to call it, is just to, just put it under a microscope. And the scope of that, or the goal of that, was just a reaction video, essentially, is just to put it out there, put it in the world, and just share that the either the positivity or negativity that came out of it. And at the end of the day, it's lighthearted, and we had some friends that overreacted intentionally, and it was funny because that's, at the end of the day, we wanted every listener.
The best.
Yeah, we wanted every listener's true and unique reactions to come through. It was unfiltered, whatever you wanted to say, whether it's good or bad, like, by all means. And again, I think that's what brought forth the success to it, is just being able to share these witty remarks that often come out of listening to things for the very first time, and then one actually narrating in front of a camera, and also for us, like, it was just very amusing, and interesting to. It's one thing for us to have written the music and having been sitting here at my place just like writing
Right.
these things and just being in our own heads and like, okay, this is cool, this is not, whatever. But now that's one phase of it, and once you put it out in the world and it's out there for everybody to pick up and nitpick and look under this microscope, to me, and I get it, like it's part of a fear of being a band or an artist, to like it's something to your heart, and you don't want people to tear it apart. But
right.
that drives me, to be honest. Like that gives me some type of joy. It gives me this itch of like, hey, like I put this together, like you tell me what you think. And I don't care if it's good or bad, but I guess that's just me kind of peering into other people's heads and understanding how every brain works differently. And
Right.
We've gotten so many different reactions. People are saying like, oh, I heard, they've compared us to bands that I wouldn't even have ever considered us being compared to. And so some people hear different things like, oh, this reminds me of a galloping horse, or this part reminds me of I'm on an ocean and I'm on this conquest, and that, like all that, like I said, whether it's good or bad, it's
Cool.
just, it's so interesting to have people experience it, I guess, in their own way.
Well, I definitely feel like the route that you decided to take, having a listening party to begin with, definitely was something new and fresh that people weren't doing. And then the concept of you implementing those reactions into a music video and then pushing that via social media, I thought was very clever. And I'm pretty sure you gained a lot of traction after that. And then on top of that, I mean, just the concept of you being able to collaborate with other like-minded, those that not only like-minded and love music, but those that are also in that creative group, right? Those that are videographers, for example, or those that, are photographers or, journalists, and all within the music industry.
Right.
And so on top of that, there was somebody, and I don't know who did it, but who was the one responsible for creating those small little stuffed, they were like stuffed little, like actually, reflections of the band members. There you go. Okay, what is that? I mean, I don't want to say stuffed animal, so maybe like a stuffed band member.
Yeah. So, and this is just kind of getting it on the camera here.
He's so cute.
I know the background is kind of jacking with the
a little, but that's supposed to. Oh, wow, there's two.
Yeah, well, there's four because there's one for every member in the band.
Oh.
So as you see here on this label, let me see, where is it? Right here.
Yeah.
This label right here. So what these are called, they're called stubbies.
Stubbies.
Our good friend Augusta makes these, and so they are handmade felt figurines, I guess you can call them.
Oh my God.
And so she'll build them custom made, handmade, according to any character that you want. And so as another promotional item for us to kind of get our word out there,
correct.
She's one of my good friends. She's also an old college buddy, and so she's got her own thing. Her company's called Felt Happens. You can find her on Instagram or Facebook, any social media. And so we reached out to her and I said, hey, like, I know you've got these stubbies going on. Can we get 4 of these guys with the likeness of the band? So we've got one for the 2 guitar players, myself included, the drummer and the bass player.
And they're supposed to look like the band member, correct?
Yeah, they're just supposed to look like us and supposed to represent us. It was a cool experience. Like I said, I saw it from I guess more of a marketing standpoint.
Correct.
And so in the sense of like, hey, like I have a friend who has a service, and because we're at the end of the day, like that's also something that we advocate also, is like, if we're your friends, if we know you from some industry or field, if we can incorporate that in what we do, even better, you know what I mean? Because we all win. And so that was my approach to her, is like, hey, like I can push your brand of Felt Happens and these services that you provide, and at the same time, we'll do some social media posts with these little figurines. And yeah, like a lot of people were like, oh my God, this is so cute, whatever. The one regret I have is not ordering enough to where we could have sold this as merch. We kind of figured that out after the fact.
Right.
But I think that would have been a cool, a cool little merch table idea, other
Yeah.
than and again, like going back to thinking outside of the box, like other than like, here's an EP on our, picture this, like here's our merch table, right? Outside of the typical, here's an EP, here's a shirt, here's a sticker and some pins. That's
Correct.
fine too. But again, like our minds are always working to like, how can we put a spin to this? Something cool and different that's like, hey, like we hadn't seen that before. And that's one of our regrets, is that like we could have collaborated on a larger scale with her, and maybe done 5 or 6 of these per member and said, hey, like here's our merch table, and take a look, buy one.
Yeah. Well, I think the only problem there would be, which one do I buy? Yeah. Which band member do I prefer? Because I don't have enough money for all of them.
I think that's going to start some
right.
some internal conflicts with the band members. Like, oh, mine sold more than yours.
Oh my goodness.
It's whatever. So yeah, definitely. For anybody tuning in, check her out.
Yeah.
Felt Happens, and she's on social medias.
Let's talk a little bit more on the direction that the band is going. As far as what's happening around the world, it's understood that, there have been many riots, and this is kind of a time for people to kind of take a step back and kind of prioritize their priorities. And we understand that people are stepping up a lot more. There have been issues like racism come up. There have been riots that have been occurring. Everyone has something to say, correct? Everyone has becoming a lot more vocal, and this is especially on social media. I know that's one way where celebrities are coming up. For example, Jennifer Aniston, she recently placed up, a mask up on her face, and she took a photo of herself on Instagram, and she really just wanted to utilize her credibility in order to persuade the society to wear a mask and how important it was to wear. So look, I'm wearing one, you should wear one too. Right? How does the band feel about what's going on around the world, and would the band ever take a stand on any kind of issue? Do you all ever take that stand when it comes down to advocacy?
Yeah, so I mean, definitely what's going on in the world right now, of course it's tragic, it's unprecedented.
Right.
And we're unfortunately living a moving target.
Right.
And the reality of it is, I think as a society, we just have to adapt the best we can, following all these CDC guidelines. And yeah, of course, like at the end of the day, we will advocate the I guess in a sense, the right thing to do. In this time and age, I think a lot of the community, people, social media in general, society favors transparency, I want to say. And so I feel like, all these standpoints, whether it's, racism, a pandemic, inequalities, all these things, people just want honesty and transparency, at least from my experience. And so, yeah, like we, any which way that we can help and essentially not be a shitty person. Absolutely. We're all for that. Unfortunately, because of this pandemic, like especially artists, like your forte is, of course, mass gatherings. That is right. where music is traditionally experienced, right, in a live setting with hundreds and thousands of people gathering. But I'll tell you what, like it's yeah, we all took a hit, and we've had to all go back home and figure things out. But I think that's not where what's that saying? That's not where the buck stops. I think there's still different creative aspects and venues that we can explore to to still get our word out there. And again, I think this all just goes back to that mentality of like, okay, door A is closed now, and we were always used to thinking door A was the only door. But now we all have to get creative, not just even music, but like in every industry almost. Like we just have to get creative, and basically whenever you need to find a solution, like it's because you need it so bad, you just get creative and then you find a solution. As artists, we are unable to perform at the moment. There's been a lot of people that we follow too that have just, as I'm sure everybody who's tuning in has noticed, like a lot of live concerts from their living rooms. And again, like I think we live on a time, day and age where, because we're so connected through social media, we have all these tools to our reach. Like even streaming things from your cell phone, like what else do you need? Like, just, prop it up somewhere. If that's all you have, prop it up somewhere, pick up your guitar, and just go live on Instagram, go live on Facebook. Yes, it's nicer if you have a bigger budget and production and all these things, but at the end of the day, like, we have things at our fingertips that can facilitate these things. But I think we just have to get creative and explore other methods of sharing our voices, our art, our work, and not pigeonhole ourselves into just doing things the traditional way. And I think another way that this ties into who we are and what we've done, a little kind of like backstory to our EP. We were always used to just finding local members here in our community, right?
Right.
And so we're starting this band. We're from McAllen, Texas, and so we're gonna find members in McAllen, Texas, and that's how we started off. And so I remember even back in the day just thinking like, oh, we might have found, a bass player, for example, Stacy, but she lives in Mission. And even then was like, oh no, that's so far, man. Like, how's that going to work? Right.
Right.
But with our EP, like we hired a drummer. He's from Boston, and like that worked out just fine. Like, and I think, again, that goes back to prove my point, is like, we're so used to doing things a certain way, a certain method, traditionally, whatever you want to call it. And so we kind of like, we're so narrow-minded on sticking to that one thing, and that's the only way we can get things done. But
right.
You kind of zoom out and you see like there's other ways to do things, and we don't necessarily have to find a drummer down here. And that actually helped us put this EP out. We couldn't find anybody down here to help us out, to help record, to help write drums. And so we found James, who's the guy on the EP. We found him on YouTube. And even then that had some growing pains, because it's like, I don't know this guy, like,
right. And I'm pretty sure he was the same. He was like, where are you guys from? Like, I don't trust you.
Exactly. Like, I've never met you.
I know.
Where is McAllen? Nobody knows where that is. And yeah, like it was also scary for us, because like we've never done that. Like, we don't know, how viable this is. Like, is it gonna work out? Like, are we gonna get duped? So many concerns.
Right.
But I mean, at the end of the day, like, I'm glad we did it. It was such a wonderful experience. It was probably one of the better experiences of my life. Just to,
okay.
It culminated again in like finally, one, being able to put out music in a professional recorded setting, and then two, overcoming that obstacle of being down a drummer, but still finding a creative solution to overcome that. And we hit this guy up, very flexible, very professional, extremely talented. He wrote and recorded drums for us, I think in the span of, I want to say 3 days. From not hearing any music to like, we send him the tracks, and then he's like, okay, I got you. And then
okay.
Like,
right.
we emailed him like on a Sunday. We got confirmation like on a Monday, and I think by like Thursday, like, he's like, here's your tracks.
Wow.
And so yeah, like, this guy was just like a beast. And so we've never met this guy. It was just all emails and text messages on Messenger. The friendship started to develop. We kept doing our part to put the EP out. Finally, the date came closer and closer to put the EP out. And then we finally, like, I started playing with the idea. I told the guys, I was like, yo, what if we flew this guy down to play with us? And so again, there was so many levels to it, right? It's
right.
Like, we don't have a drummer. And then now it's like, okay, we hired this guy, like, okay, things are going good. And so I think we thought like, okay, that's the ceiling. And then again, we kept pushing it. And I started telling the guys, I was like, what if we flew this guy down? Like, he wrote the stuff. Like, why would he not
I
be
know.
able to play it?
Right.
And even then, like, we're like, no, that's not possible. Like, again, we were just in our little box. Like, that's unheard of. How can we ever pull this off? And yeah, I mean, again, the friendship developed, and we hit him up, and I was like, yo, like, and completely nervous, like, reaching out to him and like, just even toying the idea and presenting it to him. And we were just like, yo, like, we're thinking of putting out our EP. Like, would you be game to fly down and, play? And he's like, yeah, I'm absolutely down.
Oh,
and I was just like completely relieved. Like, wow, like it's not
like he
just
took that very well. Yeah.
Yeah, he took it very well. He's very flexible. We flew him down. There was a few like scheduling complications because he had his schedule booked already because so a little bit about the guy, James. He's got his own band in Boston. He's currently relocated to New York, but he's got several projects that he's involved with. He does recording on the side, so anybody that's interested in getting some drums, and not even just death metal or prog stuff. Like the guy has I know he has got a bachelor's in like drum performance. He graduated from Berkeley, so the guy knows his stuff.
Right.
So any project that you want to do, like he's your guy. Like I vouch for him 130%. Like extremely professional, reliable. He's got his own recording equipment. You just send him the tracks. I don't think there's any genre that the guy can't play to. And so because of his scheduling conflicts, we were kind of also pressed to find the right. It was like a very narrow window that all these parts would come together for it to work. And then enter, of course, Bunny Man, David. He through his Noodle Fest performance that he put together. He put it together, and he was very accommodating into having those things align for us. And again, it was so many moving parts, but it was very stressful, but it was so relieving to have it finally all come together. And yeah, like we were in talks with James. It got all locked down, and then finally I told him, I was like, all right, we're gonna buy your airplane ticket. And then as soon as we bought that airplane ticket, that's when it hit me. Like, one, what are we doing? Two, like, this is so crazy that this is even becoming a reality. You know what I mean?
Right.
But yeah, it was scary and exciting at the same time. And I think the takeaway from all of this is like, I think this applies to so many aspects of life. Is like, just do it. Like everybody says, like when you're scared of doing something, just do it, man. Like just that you're not gonna know until you try.
Correct.
And you can only outdo yourself by being even more bold in the next step and just like raising it up another notch. So if you're scared of doing one thing, just do it. And then if you're scared of that next thing, just keep doing it. And it piles up. And eventually you're just kind of almost this like machine of like, it's trial and error. Yeah. Of course, there's certain guided, what's that word? Risks that you can take, what have you.
Right.
Be logical with it. But that's why for us, it was such an amazing experience to have reached out to somebody whom we didn't know, we found on YouTube, and it all just worked out. Like, and then to have even met the guy and then play the actual material that he wrote, we're playing and we're just looking behind us and like, there's the guy I met online.
I know. You're like, how long have you known him? For a week or whatever. How long had you known him before you met him? Or like before he came over and performed?
Before he came over, and I want to say maybe like...
maybe a good month?
No, I'd say about maybe like half a year, more or less.
Okay, good.
But this was all just like messaging and
Correct.
maybe like one FaceTime call when the time came closer to finally meet and what have you.
Wow.
But yeah, like this guy was just like, it was such a wonderful experience. And so all this to say, going back to the initial topic is like, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like we're all in quarantine and things have changed for everybody. But the point of my story is we just got to get creative and find different ways to get our voice out there. And so it doesn't have to be just finding your drummer here in the Valley. It can be, again, in a time of age of now, like your band can be split across the world and you can still make it work. Yeah, you're not going to see each other as often and you're not going to probably do as many shows and what have you, but hey, like progress is progress. And whether you're moving at 5 miles an hour or 100 miles an hour, as long as you're moving, Right. And so even with James, he's got his own band. His own band's called Aviations. And those guys are all over the country and the world. Their bass player is from Germany, so that guy's over there. 2 of the guys are I think 3 of the guys are like split across like 4 or 5 states. So I mean, those guys are just like spread. Those guys are like the Avengers, right? So whenever they've got shows or things coming up, they'll get together, they'll figure out their their schedules, and they make it work. And that was also a personal takeaway for us, is like, we don't have to all live in the same neighborhood, in the same street,
right,
in the same city, in the same country. Like that's something that I've preached to the guys, and just like, let's just be flexible and see where this takes us, because we've tried being rigid for so long and making things work a certain way, and sometimes it works, but I think we step back and realize, like, we just have to be flexible and see what comes of it. And I think that's what brought us to being able to finally put out an EP, regardless of the circumstance. It's out. It's out, and again, for us, it's a huge accomplishment to have it. One, to have it be out, and two, have it be out the way it came together. You know what I mean?
Correct. Thank you so much for coming on to the show. It's obviously been a pleasure. This is Adversity Breeds Malice. So tell us, where can listeners tune into your music currently? Let's talk about if you already have something established for next year, event details, and where can they purchase any of your merchandise?
Okay, yeah. So we're on all streaming platforms, any social media. So we're very active on Instagram. You can find us on Facebook too. Music-wise, you can do Spotify, Apple, the iTunes Store. Bandcamp is also another big one. So any support that you guys want to actually purchase a song, Bandcamp would be it. SoundCloud, there's some songs on there too as well. As far as merch, we have a lot of stuff also on our Instagram page. If ever you're interested in, we have shirts, stickers, and air fresheners, believe it or not.
Oh, wow.
Very popular item.
That's very different. You don't go you don't go to a concert and find air fresheners. It's normally the t-shirt or the sticker. So right. It's t-shirt, stickers, air fresheners. Are these air fresheners for the house or for the car?
They are for the car, but I mean, if you need one for your restroom, for your your cat's litter, right. Like whatever you need it for, it's there. And again, like, that just goes back into our way of thinking of like, like shirts are cool, but what if we did an ABM spatula or some random thing? But as far as merch, we don't have a store up yet, but we do have a few of the items listed on our Instagram account, and then of course we're always a message away, so anybody that's interested that wants to support or rep ABM in any capacity with some merch, go ahead and send us a message. We'd be more than happy to help you guys out, even mail out some stuff. But yeah, we're all aboard the social media train.
All right. So once again, this is Adversity Breeds Malice. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Guac is Extra.
Thanks, guys. Thank you all for having me. This is Ernie with ABM, Adversity Breeds Malice, live on Guac is Extra.
Guac on.